our good friend Rex Bastfield has provided a second set of questions to me about Scientology.
Did you find clay demos useful or demeaning?
Right, the clay demo for that's modelling clay. Demo is for demonstration, and in the UK we use the term plasticine for modelling clay. It's made with linseed oil, so it never dries up. The oil is always so you can keep making things with it. The idea in Scientology is that you demonstrate abstract concepts in a physical way, and that's called a clay demo. Did I find them useful? I can't, and I did many of them. Every course had them. I can't remember a single instance where I found them useful, where it developed my understanding of a concept further. I think for some people it may do. And I didn't find them demeaning either. They were just something you did and you hoped that it was fortifying your understanding.
Okay. Next one is, do you think they have a place in mainstream education?
I think the concept of demonstration of what I would call an absence of mass, if you are dealing with a textbook that's teaching you about an objective process, that it is good to actually get the mass. So I can give an example from my own life. I learned the techniques of Renaissance painting. I learned how Rembrandt, you would prepare a canvas and use lead white to make shapes on it that he would then use thick layers of paint and then thinner glazed layers of paint to build a surface. His technique was different from that of, say, Titian or of Da Vinci. I learned about those techniques. And if you were having to just learn them from a book, you really do need to do them. But making a clay demo, or using what's called a demo kit, a demonstration kit where you've got bits and pieces of things that you move around, wouldn't be useful. There may be situations in which it would be useful. None spring to mind at the moment.
Did you or anyone you know ever confess to something that actually didn't happen?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Because there is this thing during auditing, during counselling, where you pretty much grab the first thing that comes into your head. And if the e-meter verifies it, it's true. Now, the e-meter actually 50% of the time is wrong. At least 50% of the time it's reading itself, as a friend of mine found out. They may have replaced all the carbon potentiometers and stopped that by now. Hopefully they have. But I do know that e-meters are made from the cheapest possible components. So when the Mark 7 e-meter was being made, I think they're up to the Mark 8 now, a friend of mine was on the team that had it costed, and Texas Instruments said they could make it for $38 and it was sold for $2,000. So there's a little bit of a markup.
A little bit, not much.
So the meters themselves are not built to a high specification. So they have errors in them. And so if it sort of reads when you say something, well, who knows? What I found, there are two, and people are going to go looking for these now. There are two. I was asked to write life histories twice in Scientology when they were seeking to employ me. The second time I was asked to set up what's called a celebrity centre in Manchester. And so I had to write a life history. Now, this should be protected by a variety of privileges. The first is it's an employer-employee privilege, it's confidential. The second is it claimed to be my religion, so it's a priest-penitent relationship. The third is they claim to be doing counselling. So, but I found out they're actually showing these, after I left, they were showing these letters to people to put them off me. Now, these letters, I'll give one example. They contain a statement about me smoking opium. And it says that I'd smoked opium twice. I say in my own handwriting that I'd smoked opium twice. I'd never smoked opium. I had twice actually smoked the resin of what is called the Iranian poppy, which is the standard big red poppy that you see in gardens, which is not the Chinese white, which is the opium poppy. And I'd been led to believe that this, in fact, it just gives you a headache, so I don't recommend it
Oh,
at all.
okay.
So I've, never smoked opium. But you'll come to the point. There was also, notionally, the idea that I'd made a suicide attempt before joining Scientology. That also is not true. I had inadvertently taken too many pills, but I didn't go to hospital. Nothing happened, and it had been remade because you go over memories. There's a theory of memory called the multiple drafts theory, which I first read in Claude Daniel Dennett's Consciousness Explained, which I think is largely a dreadful hypothesis and doesn't explain consciousness. He's not, but I read it when it came out in 91. It was very interesting, but he does talk about multiple drafts, and that is that you make a new memory every time you tell something. So when you talk about something, you will of course have a memory of how you remembered it, and it redrafts the memory, so the fish gets bigger and bigger with retelling. And I actually saw this. I was 14 and I'd been looking after an office for my oldest brother Robin, and who was in real estate at that time, and he'd been away for a week on holiday, and he came back in the morning, and we went to several. I think we went to 3 different places where we ate something. He had a drink, what have you. And something had happened that morning. I don't remember what it was, but when he first told it, it was slightly more interesting than the actual event. The second time he told it, he turned to me and said, "Isn't that true, John?" And I had to go, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah.
And by the third time it was told, he'd actually created quite a fascinating story out of quite trivial events.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to make any criticism of my brother. That's fine. We tell stories. Who cares? Yeah. Ron Hubbard, of course, was another matter altogether. He could, explode the tiniest event into a massive achievement on his part, and I was able to find that out in many instances. So, redrafting memory, confessing to things you haven't done, yes, it happens frequently in a system where confession is expected from you, and where to some extent, the worse the thing you've done, the more attention you get. You'll find it in revivalist Christian groups where people go up and tell the evil things they've done. That I'm sure that if you recorded them one meeting after another, you'd find that the stories were just getting more and more interesting.